everyone, welcome back to the City INT Grand Challenge LIV training series. In this upcoming section, we have invited two university professors to share their ideas on how to select the right solutions to implement and also to share with us their recent projects related to the sub-themes of the City INT Grand Challenge under the pandemic. And after the sharing, we will have a Q&A section. You're most welcome to enter your questions using the Q&A function below. And since we have two speakers today, so without further ado, I will now like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Yunhua Lam, Associate Professor of Department of Chemistry of City University of Hong Kong, to share his idea on curiosity, driven thinking methodology, and definitely also his recent project on environmental sustainability. So, Dr. Lam, the time is now yours.
Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for introducing me. I'm associate professor of something, department of something, but I prefer to call myself associate professor of ignorance from a department of curiosity. And I'm going to tell you why by the end of this talk. So, as you can see from this slide, I'm a scientist and I'm a university lecturer teaching biochemistry, chemistry, and biology. But I'm mainly here because while I'm teaching like science, I'm also very active in so-called creativity research and teaching. So in CityU, we've been running a program, summer program called Addicted to Discovery for a few years now. And as you can see, this is one of our posters. Are you addicted to discovery? And mainly my kind of hobby and my interest is really to observe how young people create. So what kind of fire them up, what make them creative? So at the same time, I think I'm here because I'm quite experienced as being a judge in a lot of innovation or science research competition. And I've seen a lot of over the past 10 years, I've seen a lot of work from students and the general public in solving various practical problems. And my experience is that I see the same thing again and again. So for example, about sustainability or food waste, and every year I will see people proposing to make a bacteria that can digest plastic, or make a worm that can eat all the rubbish, or produce so-called bioplastic from starch, from potatoes or coconuts. And it's almost like a variation of the same theme year by year. So I would kind of wondering why. And after some thinking, I got a feeling that that's because most of the students or most of the people tend to, they're very eager to answer questions instead of asking questions, right? So if everybody in the world have the same question, then of course we have the same answer, right? So today I'm going to tell you a little bit of our experience, tell you a few stories of how our students kind of take a different approach, right? Or how we showed our students to take a different approach in this kind of situation. So the first thing is we should start from a question. So we should spend far more time asking questions than coming up with answers. And I know for kind of Hong Kong education system is difficult, right? Because the good student get all the marks from answering questions, while the student who asked questions didn't get any kind of brownie points. So we should remember everybody in the world are asking similar question, how to kind of promote sustainability, reduce food waste, and everybody kind of come up with the same answers. So if you Google food waste, then we kind of have very, very similar things, right? You can see similar things. So my first advice to you, and in fact to all my students, research students, is that Google is not your friend. Don't Google it. Because if you Google it, the best you can come up with are something that other people in the world are doing. So basically, I'm not saying that, of course, you shouldn't do any research, but before you expose to other people's ideas, you should come up with a unique question, right? So how are you going to do that? So the first thing to do is to read the brief, right? So this is kind of from advertising. Read the brief, and I'm not going to read the brief for you because it's kind of you can kind of see the brief from the competition website, and you may notice that okay, this is kind of a competition about environmental sustainability and social connectivity. So environmental sustainability, there are two questions, right? So the questions are very, very long and specific, right? They're superbly written. Whoever wrote these questions must be a really, really kind of good mind, right? Because it's very, very specific. And so if you don't read the brief, you kind of get the impression that this is about problem one, about plastic forks, right? Lunch boxes. Problem two is about food waste. But if you generalize this specific brief into just 2 words, you end up with something very, very common, ordinary, and average. So after you read the brief, it is important, I always teach my students, to think about the brief very, very carefully, together with your friends, right? So in normal, this kind of in usual conversation, is like meet your friends, print the brief out, read it together, and simply joke about, simply experience the questions, visualize it, and imagine what if. So, and only by this way, and spend a long time, spend days, whole afternoon to do that, and only by doing that, you can come up with a question that is related to the brief, but is uniquely yours. Because this question is kind of driven by your collective curiosity, right? So it's no longer a general question, but a question that is specifically yours. So I'm going to give you some examples because of time. We're going to move on quickly, right? So the brief is about like food waste, right? So it's not just about food waste, but think about food waste that is related to you personally. So I guess some of you are living in Hong Kong, maybe more, or you who's listening are living in Hong Kong. What is unique about food waste in Hong Kong? So you can see the Hong Kong people, Chinese people, we love to eat dinner together, right? So we have the main dishes in the center of the table, and then we have a bowl of rice. So this kind of eating, so think about it, right? This kind of eating, if you kind of pick your food from the central bowl, it's very, very difficult for us to know who have the most left over, right? So you can kind of take personal responsibility of your leftover. And this kind of unique to Chinese families. So have you thought about that? What is unique about the food waste in Hong Kong? So another thing is, so basically you throw away lunch boxes, right? Plastic forks and chopsticks, right? So basically they're everywhere just like that. And so what is unique about it? What is your personal experience about rubbish in the street, right? So Hong Kong is uniquely good because there are lots of rubbish bins everywhere in the street, right? You can just throw rubbish there, not into the bin, but by the bin, and somehow somebody will get rid of them, maybe 2 times a day. So it's wonderful, right? But have you imagined that maybe it's just too wonderful, right? In the UK, for example, where I lived for a long time, the bin man collect the bins once a week, right? So we can't afford to throw away so many things, and we have to think, right? We have to recycle because our food waste will kind of be there for a week, right? So have you think about that? So, and also maybe you can try and visualize, right? Suppose the government in Hong Kong decided tomorrow that they're going to remove all the bins, right, in Hong Kong. They're not going to do that, right? But imagine they're going to do that. What's going to happen, right? So from this, maybe to that, right? But a city without any rubbish bin or any bin man, janitor, for a month actually have happened before, right? So there's a kind of a photo taken from almost 30 years ago in London, where the bin man went on strike, right? So there's no bin collection for months. So you can imagine that, right? Stinking, the smell, and also the flies and cockroaches and rats, right? So imagine that if you force yourself to visualize this situation, what's going to happen, right? So there will be cockroaches everywhere. You can basically imagine cockroach everywhere in Hong Kong, right? But have you seen a cockroach eat? Have you imagined how cockroach eat, right? Do they have favorite food, right? Do they eat everything, or do they prefer curry rather than Western food, or do they have a special taste? So some of my students actually ask this question, right? It's a stupid question, but it's at least a fun question, right? So we decided none of us have seen a cockroach eat in our lives, right? So we decided to catch some cockroach. Don't ask us how we do that. We catch some cockroach and we simply videotape for hours and hours how cockroach eat their food. So it's a stupid question. Why do we do that? But it's actually not that a stupid question, because if we want to recycle food waste, we better give the cockroach something they like, right? Or turn the food waste into a format that they prefer, right? It's almost like if you want your baby to eat something better, kind of buy them more sweet or milk, right? So I don't have time to tell you the result. The result is extremely interesting. It turns out that cockroach do have their favorite food, right? So another thing is, a lot of people said there are a lot of flies, right? So I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking about, maybe we can recycle food by using the food waste, right, to raise worms, right, insect larvae, so that these worms can be eaten by fish or chicken or other animals or even human beings, right, maybe in future. So this is really, really good, and this is a Google answer, right? It's a standard answer. But some of my students said, I've never seen a fly kind of developing before, right? The maggots eating the food waste, right? I've never seen it. How can I design any experiments or ideas based on that? So they decided to do it, right? So basically they brought some meat. I remember it's salmon, put it in my lab, and then after a week, maggots will come out, right? It's really, really terrible. But then what we find is actually at the same time as producing the worms or maggots, something else will produce, right? Those are the cocoons. It turns out that flies, we all learn from school, right? Flies metamorphosize, and well, they actually make this kind of shells, right? And they shred the shells, and when they mature, it turns out after some research that a significant amount of energy actually goes to the cocoon, not the meat of the worms, right? So if you recycle the food by raising worms, you're actually wasting a lot of energy, right? And produce additional rubbish, right? So, so therefore, the idea is the cocoon is actually part of the problem, part of the solution. At the same time, and in collaboration with another lab in our department, the chemists, they actually found out a way of recycling the materials from cocoon, which is called chitin, into something that can be used as fuel. So then we are actually using up everything, right? So the worms will will be used as food, but at the same time, this unusable exoskeleton can also be recycled, right? So because of time, just one last bit. So sometimes we are thinking about, I told you we have to visualize and think about, imagine what about rubbish everywhere and rubbish. So I told you that I will come to imagine, visualize the problem. So maybe, just a suggestion, we spend too much time on thinking about the rubbish, right? So I kind of been brainstorming with my students, and we decided, one student said there are two things in the world, right? There are two things in the universe. The universe, everything in the universe can be divided into rubbish and non-rubbish. So we probably spend too much time on thinking about rubbish and not enough time thinking about non-rubbish, right? So have you ever been to a rubbish bin, right? Rubbish collection place and look at rubbish thrown away by everybody in Hong Kong? I suggest you really should do that, right? And the idea is not to kind of dig up other people's rubbish, but think about what do people prefer not to throw away. Maybe that's interesting, right? So imagine people never throw away money, right? Never throw away something that's memorable, never throw away photograph or personal memories, computers. So maybe that's something that we need to think about. So people never throw away money, right? So kimchi, for example, is one of my favorite food. A bag of kimchi like that costs about 50 Hong Kong dollars. But you probably kind of think about kimchi as a really delicious Korean food. But kimchi is food waste, right? Kimchi is exact definition of fermented food waste. But then kimchi is expensive, right? So that's because when the Korean people, Korean culture recycled their unused vegetables, they turned it into something more valuable. They added value to it by making it more delicious. And not only delicious, but it turns out that the fermentation process actually created a lot of healthy side products, right? So-called micronutrients that is good for you, right? So now suddenly kimchi food waste is good for you, right? So my lab is working for a long time into looking at natural products and turning natural products into antibiotics. It turns out that a lot of fermentation products, including kimchi, they contains antibacterial properties. They can actually keep bacteria from growing, right? So suddenly you are turning something that is not rubbish into non-rubbish, right? If a company is collecting um, um, uh, fermented composed food waste as a raw material, starting material for making medicine, then everybody will be kind of keeping their food waste, right? So to finish, I've told you one very simple concept. That is the combination of ignorance, which is bad thing, curiosity, not necessarily good thing, but the combination of these two characteristics will become very, very powerful. They will become the driving force of your innovation. So that's all the time I have. Good luck. I wish everybody get inspired and somehow want to enter this competition. Right? Entering the competition is the starting point of the journey of innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lam, for your inspiring sharing. I do agree, actually, that many of us are now getting used to looking up answers using search engines. But actually, Dr. Lam reminded on how important it is to think about it on your own. And I remember Dr. Lam said he's actually a professor of ignorance. Ignorance always comes with curiosity. And instead, you want to find the best solutions. Actually, it's not answering the questions. Instead, you need to non-stop asking why, digging deep. So that's why you can see professor is actually a professor in science research. Science research is all about finding why, and in order to have best solutions for community. So that's why thank you so much for his wonderful and fabulous sharing with us. And moving on, before I pass the time to our next speaker, just want to remind everyone again that the submission deadline of the City INT Grand Challenge has been extended to the 30th of June 2021. Remember, the submission deadline has been extended. The new deadline is now the 30th of June 2021. So this extension allows more time both online and offline for applicants to form teams and prepare for the challenge. For more details, please visit our event website. Besides, the previous webinars were also recorded and have been uploaded to our event website. You're highly encouraged to watch them again and be inspired by our guest speakers. So now I think it's our prime time to move on to our second speaker, Professor Tai Kai Ng, the Chair Professor of Department of Physics from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Professor Ng is going to explore the problems that the education sector is facing when trying to improve social connectivity with new technology under COVID-19. Now, Professor Ng, the time and stage is now yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Dear students, good afternoon. Well, the reason why I am talking about social connectivity is that actually in the past year or so, I've spent quite a lot of time talking with people in the field, both in Hong Kong and outside Hong Kong, on how to solve the problem of social connectivity in relation to education. Well, I think everybody knows that. We are facing quite lots of difficulty in education nowadays because of COVID-19. Because of this pandemic, the government and everybody advised that we have to have social distancing. Okay, and I think you all know that in the past year or so, you have all experienced shortened class hours, sometimes even no schooling, and everything is replaced by online learning. Well, it seems that this situation of shortened classroom hours and online learning will become a norm in education sector in the coming 1 to 2 years because of COVID-19. Now, let me emphasize that this is not just a problem in Hong Kong. It's a problem that is facing worldwide students, worldwide schools, and everybody has to struggle to find finding good solutions to these problems. How do we connect with students? How do students continue to learn? I mean, that's the issue. Well, I think everybody is trying to attack this problem from at least trying to see whether technology can help. And I think all these online courses, all these Zoom classes, or whatever other online technology that you're using are a result of this technological possibility that has come about in the past few years. But actually, when we are trying to apply all this technology to solve the learning problem, actually we are facing many factors, many problems which comes up. And many of these problems are non-technical problems. And I'm going to introduce you to today a number of these problems and see whether you can get your own solutions, suggestions, how to solve these problems. Let me emphasize that these are really problems that is facing globally in the world, and everybody is working hard to try to find solutions to this problem. Now, the first problem I think that everybody realized, and there has been lots of discussion in the newspapers and so on, is that the hardware of online learning. Deprived groups, families who are not so well off, they may not have enough resources to buy a desktop computer or notebook for the students. So students may have to use their cell phone for this online classes. And actually, this is actually bad for many reasons. First of all, the screen is too small. I mean, it's actually very unhealthy to have yourself fixed, gazing a fixed angle towards the screen for 1 or 2 hours. This is very unhealthy. But to solve this problem, you need money. And actually, this is causing a big problem now that the education sector realized that the gap in successfulness between the rich families and poor families is widening. This is, again, a worldwide phenomenon, and Hong Kong is facing the same problem, has been discussed in TV, newspapers, etc., that our poorer family, deprived groups are disadvantaged when we are in this online learning age. Okay. Now, actually, this is not the only problem. Even for middle-class families in Hong Kong, you can imagine, there's another problem, which is that during the COVID-19 time, very often it's not only one children who is staying at home and using computer. It's the student, maybe also some of his or her family members, and he or she may have sisters or brothers. And actually, everyone is fighting for the resources. Now, it's not only the problem of computer, not only the problem whether there is enough computer, but if you actually, something very interesting to do, which I have done, is to go to the Google and look at pictures of people promoting online learning. This in the right corner here, there's a picture, a typical picture of an online learning setup where all the students have separate desks. They have a rather far distance from each other. Well, that makes the environment rather comfortable. But in Hong Kong, this is basically impossible, even for middle-class families. And when everybody is crowded together, actually, it's very difficult to learn. I think many of you will agree with that. So how should we solve these problems? Well, one way, well, the other problem that people are talking about is whether or how we can develop better online learning materials. Well, because in this particular case, particular period of COVID-19, many teachers are trying, just learning how to develop online learning materials, starting from the beginning. And this is a very difficult time for many teachers, and they're not often doing a good job. So should there be a more systematic way of developing these online learning materials is another question which is raised in the education sector. And it's something for you to think about because you're students. So you should have have to say what is the best way to do. Now, okay, these are more or less resources problems. But in terms of social connectivity, there are many other issues. Now, in online learning, the classroom hour is much reduced. And actually, the students have a lot of time, which is sort of, well, free time. I mean, where students have to decide how to learn by themselves. So that means the practice in learning has to be different. So what is the role of teachers in this kind of new learning situation? Should students be taught to have so-called self-regulated learning? That means students should learn how to learn by themselves. Basically, that's what it means. And if that is the case, then the traditional role of teachers, at least in Hong Kong, will be different. Teachers will behave more as facilitators instead of teachers. Well, let me emphasize that actually this is a concept which is not new and has been around this education sector for many years. Actually, education research did show that self-motivated, self-regulated learning, if successful, if students are self-motivated, is much, much better than learning passively from teachers. So actually, this is something which is that people have been trying to do, push for a long time. Now, of course, it's also very, very important that students should have interaction between themselves. Well, in the old days, where students spend quite long hours at schools, so students can talk with each other during recesses or in classes. But now, with this new situation, the face-to-face interaction between students are much reduced, not only because of the classes, but actually because they are not together for a very long time. And if you believe in the issue in the idea that we should have social distancing, then actually it's just not correct or not good to put too many students together for a long period of time. So this is something that one has to figure out how to do that, how to make use of the so-called outside classroom time. This is another thing which has been which is an important issue that have been brought up in discussion in many education sectors, including our own EDB Education Bureau. Well, another very interesting point is the parents' role in learning. Well, in the past few months, we observed that if you use this online learning, then very often, I think some of you might have this experience also, that the teachers, that the parents will sit together with the students to learn. This happens quite often for students with younger age. And that means the parents' participation in learning has increased quite a lot. And actually, many schools have received quite lots of complaints from parents because they are there listening to the teachers. So is that good or is that bad? What should be the parents' role in learning in this new situation? That's another issue that has been going around and has been, as the educators do not know what to do yet. Okay. Now, maybe, what I've mentioned is actually the Hong Kong situation. Maybe we can look around worldwide. What are the considerations? Well, just like every other issues about COVID-19, there are two schools of thought. One would try to assume that COVID-19 is a short-term phenomenon. Well, it will go away in 1 or 2 years and we'll go back to normal, just like what we have done before. We just resume all the old practice of education, resume all the face-to-face teaching as before. So if that is the case, what we need in this transient period, in the coming 1 to 2 years, is a transient solution, how to deal with this situation at the meantime. But there is another school of thought, which is actually quite popular in education sector, which is that while we believe that COVID-19 will coexist with humanity for quite a long time, and we should take this opportunity to change or upgrade our education system. Well, actually, this is a direction where many educators are thinking. And actually, similar consideration are also applicable to other areas. This is something that you may think about. What are the pros and cons of the two approaches? Now, finally, there is one thing which the education sector has been sort of toiling around. Well, even in the absence, or before COVID-19 struck humanities, people in education sector and in AI sector has been talking about a new normal where many of our existing education practices will be replaced by artificial intelligence. It's believed that this technology and resources will come up in the next, maybe 5 to 10 years. And actually, there are science fictions or actually rigorous academic papers trying to explore what could happen if AI is replacing most of our school function. And COVID-19 has just accelerated this school of thought. Now, the issue that we are facing, the most important issue is perhaps the role of human beings in this new system. To what extent can human teaching be replaced by human-AI interaction? This is a topic which is still under research for many, many people. It's a very interesting topic, and it's another topic that one can try to study. And there's another issue, which is called the diversity issue. Well, is it better? Well, nowadays teaching in different schools, different countries, are taught by different teachers, and everybody have their own style, and they may be teaching something different. Therefore, our education is actually quite diversified. Well, in Hong Kong, if you think about different schools, every teachers in different schools taught a little bit different. But if you replace everything by AI, then actually it's only one voice, basically, one global voice teaching everybody. Although AI can take care of individual a little bit better. Okay, so what do you think? How should we approach this problem? Okay, I think basically I have already just summarized by my experience in this, how schools how education sector are dealing with this COVID-19. In particular, many of the problems that we face are concerned about how would human interaction be changed, and what are the solutions to these problems. Well, this last slide is basically a summary of what I have taught I mean, you can have a look at this, but I'm not going to go through this. I think that's all I want to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ng, for your wonderful sharing. Well, since I can see we have a lot of questions coming in, so delay no more, let's start with the question and answer section. And to start off with, for the first question, I would like to ask Dr. Lam, to what extent do you agree curiosity and creativity are shaped by experiences with parents, teachers, peers, and even the learning environment? And do you think undereducated people can be creative as well? What's your thought, Dr. Lam?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. It's a great question. Although I'm not sure I understand the word undereducated. Maybe children, babies, maybe undereducated. Education is a way of life, right? It's not a it's not a quality of life. I agree that creativity and curiosity, just like everything else in life, is shaped by our environment and right, and kind of growing up situation. But we have done some research in this area. Maybe I can tell you a little bit about it. So children, preschool children, like younger than 5 years old, I'm talking about in North American situation, they tend to ask a lot of questions, ask their parents. We call them kind of evidence of curiosity, right? So either by look or by question. So they usually do that. I remember the data is about 12 episodes per hour. Like every 5 minutes, there are kind of a evidence of curiosity. By the time these children become 18 years old, can you guess how many episodes of curiosity per hour? That's 0. That's really no. And that's really sad, isn't it? Right? So I guess the interpretation is there's something to do with the school system. Most of us are not homeschooled, so most of us went to kind of average school, not average, but standard school with a classroom. In the classroom teaching, if you ask many questions, so it's actually not necessarily be praised by the teacher. In fact, if you ask too many questions, you become disruptive, right? So because the teacher all have a teaching plan or syllabus, so-called syllabus to stick to. So therefore, when a child is a little bit older in primary school, they tend to experience have experience that your parents or your teachers kind of ask you to shut up and kind of go home and study, right? Go get back to your room and read a book or something like that. And that's very, very traumatic. So, and then by the time you grow up, you basically learn to shut up, right? So the way to kind of counteract on this problem is you have to learn to ask questions with your peers, right? In the absence of your parents and teachers. And also sometimes have a dialogue with yourself, like asking yourself questions, basically. In order not to be disruptive, and also to believe that asking question, being disruptive in a way, being curious is actually a good thing, right? Is kind of one quality that can allows you to link back to your childhood, to your age of innocence, right? So because of time, I better move on. I hope kind of this answer is kind of okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lam, for such a comprehensive explanation of how actually creative. It's not something that's hard to train. It's kind of being creative. It's just changing your way, your mentality, your mind and thinking. It's a way to empower yourself. I think just never stop at no. Just ask why and go deep into the issues and questions. Eventually you will find yourself actually being more creative than you can think of. Okay, so due to time constraint, let's move on to the last question, and this last question will be for Professor Ng. Professor Ng, teachers, parents, and students have commented that face-to-face teaching is the most effective way for youth education. Despite the cost aspect, do you think teaching effectiveness should also be considered when adopting new technology in education for long terms?
Of course, one should take that into account. But let me tell you something that we have just discovered. Actually, during the last year or so, we have been doing survey quite continuously with students to see their opinion on online learning. And it's very true that at the earlier time, most of the students prefer the old way of face-to-face learning. But actually, in the recent 2-3 months, we have done some surveys in high schools. And now the ratio of students who like online learning and dislike online learning is almost like 50-50. So actually, the whole thing is changing. But I do agree that if you want to replace face-to-face learning by online learning, much has to be done. And actually, this is one issue that I have just point out in my presentation, that how should one develop the new online learning materials, and what should be the role of teachers also in online learning. These are issues, questions that the education sector has been wondering. And certainly students should have their voices. How should teaching be done?
Yes, certainly. New model, new normal, new education environment. There are still quite some ways and also some steps that we would like to find solutions for. So to conclude, once again, thank you so much to Professor Ng and Dr. Lam for their wonderful sharing today. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining our webinar this afternoon. Simply scan the QR code at the corner here to complete a 30 seconds simple questionnaire, just 30 seconds. That's all you need to help us plan better for your event next time. And for the City INT Grant Challenge LIVE training series, we have invited prominent speakers to share their experiences and stories in upcoming seminars. Stay tuned with us on the event page at www.citytechgc.hk. Ready to bring your ideas to life and help elevate Hong Kong's eminent challenges? Get involved and submit your application now. Feel free to drop us your inquiry at email, or even you can call 2629-0148. Last but not the least, be an innovator. We look forward to receiving your creative ideas to help elevate Hong Kong's eminent challenges. Here's the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and I do look forward to seeing you all again next time. See you. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.